Welcome back to Harbour Unboxed. Today we're taking a look at another product that, I don't know, why are we even doing this? I can't take it anymore, guys. I am starting to lose it. I can't review another product that doesn't make sense or doesn't offer anything new. It's been like 2 years now. Make it stop. But before you do, today's sponsor spot is brought to you by ASUS and their latest range of Z790 motherboards supporting 12th, 13th and 14th generation Intel Core processors. For those of you seeking a budget-friendly option, one of our favourite Z790 motherboards is the Tough Gaming Z790 Plus, available in either DDR4 or DDR5 variants with and without Wi-Fi. There's also the recently updated version called the Tough Gaming Z790 Pro, featuring DDR5 exclusively. But for those of you seeking something a bit more high-end, we've tested a number of excellent Z790 Strix boards, and for my personal gaming system, I'm using the ROG Strix Z790F gaming Wi-Fi, which packs loads of USB 3 ports, PD 3.130 watt charging, and a powerful V-Core VRM using 16 90-amp power stages. And right now, for Australian viewers, you'll receive a free Corsair Vengeance RGB 32GB DDR5 6000CL36 memory kit when you purchase select ASUS Z790 motherboards with an ASUS all-in-one liquid cooler. So for more information, please check the link in the video description. Okay, so in all seriousness, the last year or so of PC hardware releases they've been pretty damn boring. Sure, there has been the odd exciting or interesting product release, but overall, the bulk of the releases have been pretty much like what we have here for you today. And that is to say, they've been a bit underwhelming. But don't get me wrong, I am a big fan of price cuts. So that aspect of today's release, I am totally on board for. But really, that's all we have for you today, a price cut. And I fear it may even be too little, too late. That being the case, I'm actually not quite sure what we're doing here. And that's awkward because it's kind of my job and has been for over 20 years now. I mean, we are here to review Nvidia's new GeForce RTX 4080 Super, which you'd assume is a special version of the original RTX 4080, but really it's basically just the original RTX 4080 with a much needed price cut. So why call it the RTX 4080 Super? Why not just announce an official price cut for the RTX 4080 and call it a day? Well, you might think that's because Nvidia doesn't officially discount their products, but that's not the case at all. The RTX 4070, for example, just received an official price cut from $600 to $550 to make way for the 4070 Super. So they were willing to do it for the RTX 4070, but for some reason, not the 4080. Instead, they've reworked the RTX 4080 to create the 4080 Super using the full AD103 silicon, which means you get a slight increase in core count with faster memory. So then, the 40 Super is a new product. Well, technically, yeah, it is, but in reality, also not really. And last week we saw just how underwhelming the RTX 4070 Ti Super performance uplift was, but compared to what we're getting here, the Ti Super was kind of a big deal. That's because the RTX 4080 Super delivers a 5% increase in cores, a 2% frequency boost, and memory that is clocked 3% higher. All said and done, you can expect up to a 5% performance increase. Nvidia's told us to expect around 3%, and everything else remains pretty well the same. So that means you're getting the same VRAM capacity and all that other good stuff. Of course, the big change here is the price. Nvidia has reduced the MSRP from $1,200 US with the original 4080 to $1,000 US for this new Super version. So that's good, but realistically, Nvidia were forced to do this anyway. The RTX 4080 wasn't that popular at $1,200 US, and midway through the product cycle, sales were pretty dead. So then I guess the question is a 17% price cut and a very minor bump in performance enough to revive the RTX 4080? Well, to find out, we're skipping all of the individual game benchmarks as the data is super boring, pun intended there, and instead we're going to dive into the 12-game average data and then look at cost per frame, ray tracing, all that sort of stuff as an average. So let's go do that. We'll start with the 1080p data, because why not? We have it, though of course a lot of the games here were CPU limited. In any case, we see that on average the 4080 Super is 2% faster than the original 4080, making it just 2% slower than the 7900 XTX. But let's move on to the 1440p results. At 1440p, the 4080 Super is just 3% faster than the original 4080, and Nvidia told us well ahead of time to expect around a 3% uplift, so they were right on the money there. They also stressed that this release is really all about that new $1,000 US MSRP. Finally, at the 4K resolution, the 4080 Super is 4% faster than the original 4080, though this did mean it was 9% slower than the 7900 XTX and 24% slower than the RTX 4090. So for strictly rasterization performance, AMD still has a slight performance lead with the 7900 XTX, so let's take a look at ray tracing. As you can see, ray tracing performance does remain an issue for AMD, and with a mixture of titles, the 7900 XTX averaged 77 FPS at 1440p, making the 4080 Super 31% faster, and that's a massive performance difference. Now here's a look at the MSRP cost per frame data based on the rasterization numbers. When compared to the original 4080, this new Super version is 19% better value, thanks to slightly better performance and of course a $200 discount. But as we found with the other Super refresh models, the 4080 Super is really what the 4080 should have been when it was first released back in late 2022. And highlighting just how poor value the original 4080 was, and still is the retail pricing data. The 19% improvement in value for the 4080 Super still sees it situated towards the bottom of our graph, but at least it's matching what the 4070 Ti delivers, which I suppose isn't great, but for a high-end GeForce 40 series GPU, it's also about as good as it gets. And I wasn't wrapped with the 4070 Ti Super, but honestly, having now seen what the 4080 Super has to offer, it doesn't seem all that bad. At least there you got the upgrade to 16GB of VRAM. For the 4080 Super to match the value of the 4070 Ti Super, it would need to cost no more than $940 US, but I guess there has to be some kind of premium associated with that 4080 series branding. Also, as underwhelming as the $1,000 4080 Super looks here, it does still manage to outcompete the $980 7900 XTX, despite costing 6% more per frame, and I say this because the additional features of the GeForce GPU, which I will talk about a bit later on the video, make the 4080 Super a better deal in our opinion, stuff like ray tracing, performance, and higher quality upscaling. Speaking of ray tracing, here's a look at the cost per frame based on our 10-game average data at 1440p, of course using ray tracing. Previously, the 7900 XTX offered similar value to the RTX 4080, despite being a little over 20% slower on average. But with the updated pricing, the 4080 Super is over 20% better value than the 7900 XTX, and in fact, even the much cheaper previous generation Radeon parts can't hold a candle to the value of the 4080 Super here. Finally, let's take a look at the cost per frame data calculated using the 4K results, and again, we'll start with the MSRPs, just to see where things should be and how these current generation models compare to previous generations. Previously at 1440p, we found that the 4080 Super was just 3% more costly per frame than the 7900 XTX, but now, at 4K, the results further favour the Radeon GPU, as it's now 9% better value. So at least relative to the 7900 XTX, the 4080 Super does better at 1440p. Then if we look at the current retail pricing, we see that the 4080 Super is 12% more costly per frame when compared to the Radeon GPU. So for those of you interested purely in rasterization performance, this is the point where we feel that the 7900 XTX starts to become a viable option. So that is to say when it's offering more than a 10% discount in terms of cost per frame. So there you have it, the RTX 4080 is now 3 to 4% faster and it costs $200 US less. So it's all positive in that sense, but is it enough after 14 months? As I said earlier, this really is what the RTX 4080 should have been from the start, and even then it would have only been really a very mild improvement over the RTX 3080. For it to be a true generational uplift, it would need to cost no more than $800, so that explains why the RTX 4080 was so poorly received upon launch and ultimately didn't sell that well. Of course, Nvidia's none too phased given the demand AI has generated for their GPUs. They really lucked it out the moment crypto went bust. The question still remains though, Is a $1,000 RTX 4080 an attractive option in early 2024? I ask this because I suspect most who wanted this level of performance already pulled the trigger on a 4080 at $1,200 US, or got the 7900 XTX for $1,000. So I'm not really sure if those who have been holding out all this time for something better are going to jump on a $1,000 4080. But I suppose if you are in the market for a high-end GPU and your budget can accommodate for an RTX 4080 Super or 7900 XTX, you're probably asking yourself which one should you get. For me, the 4080 Super, it's a pretty easy pick here, given that they both do cost around $1,000 US. And look, it's easy enough to downplay stuff like ray tracing and upscaling as key selling points on GeForce GPUs that are priced below $500 US, and I don't mean we go out of our way to do so, rather they've proven to be questionable features when looked at in depth. For example, lower-end GeForce GPUs such as those in the 4060 series offer a heavily compromised ray tracing experience, both in terms of visual quality and the frame rate performance. Moreover, upscaling doesn't work that well at 1080p. The quality is quite poor as there simply isn't enough pixel data to work with. But for high-end products that can provide frame rates north of 60 FPS while making heavy use of ray-traced effects in games such as Cyberpunk, it does become a key selling point, or at least it can be depending on your preferences. Likewise, because you're able to game at least 1440p, or really you'd probably be gaming at 4K, upscaling becomes a useful tool as it works considerably better at higher resolutions, and it really is quite fantastic at 4K. So you can lean much more heavily on Nvidia's superior ray tracing performance and upscaling quality when comparing the 4080 Super to AMD's Radeon RX 7900 XTX. As it stands, the Radeon GPU is just 10% better value based on our 4K rasterization data, which means it really needs to drop down to at least $900, and even then, a lot of gamers will easily justify the $100 premium to take advantage of ray tracing and DLSS. So it'll be very interesting to see if AMD makes a much-needed pricing correction, really to their entire Radeon lineup. But in this context, very much need to make a correction there to the 7900 XTX. And yeah, now that the RTX 4080 Super officially costs $1,000 US, let me know what you think about this particular product for $1,000 US. Do you think it's a good deal? If you are holding out, has this enticed you to now go and buy what is essentially an RTX 4080 after a 14-month wait, or are you just holding out for the next generation in the hope that that actually improves stuff like cost per frame? So let me know about that in the comment section below, and I'll be sure to read your feedback. Also, don't forget to like the video, subscribe for more content, and if you'd like to support us directly, we have Floatplane Patreon. Signing up to either one of those things will give you access to our exclusive Discord server for members only, monthly live stream for members only, Q&A stuff, behind-the-scenes content, a lot of cool things there, so check it out if you're interested. But if not, that is perfectly fine, and I would like to thank you for watching this video. I'm your host, Steve. See you again next time.